Hi, welcome.
Hey, how are you?
Hey, Matt, good. I
Good.
almost forgot that I had to press that button. I was like, when is he going to come on?
Oh no, sorry.
I
I,
know,
I was
right?
actually I was actually just introducing myself to my crew, and then I was gonna hop in. But yeah, good to see you. Long time no talk to.
Yeah, right.
Hmm.
Exactly. I know. I think actually a couple people I would try to post this on Instagram in my story and they were like, I said TikTok, which is illegal.
Hmm.
So I,
Illegal on. Oh yeah. Hmm. Yeah.
on
The,
Instagram.
the the different platforms don't like. I always joke that the platforms are very insecure, and they don't
Yeah.
like it when we talk about other platforms. So just a little hint. They don't even in lives. I don't even say the word Bluetooth with a Y.
Yeah.
Because even if it picks up on that, the algorithm doesn't like it.
Interesting. I learn something new every day. And like
Yeah.
this is
Or if you
really
look at yeah, or if you look at my posts whenever I post anything about Bluetooth, I always put the letter U instead of spelling it out.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. The
Okay.
other here's
Um,
a couple of other hints. They actually don't like it when you say BIO or anything like that. They want everything to stay on that. That TikTok is very insecure.
yeah, very much so. And
Mhm.
that's I think it's tough to have but the whole point is that we can't do lives multiple places. Though I
Yep.
have seen people do that sometimes with YouTube and then be on TikTok at the same time. Things like
I've done it.
that, but not
Yeah, I've done it. I've done it. I'll just have two things going, either two phones going.
oh, two
But
phones.
you do have to have two devices. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Right. Well, I tried to invite some people over, and we'll see. This topic to me, obviously, I found it really interesting. Last time that we had a live together, you started
Hmm.
mentioning the stages of a relationship, and and I'll get into. But I find it really I would be very helpful for people that have more of a codependent tendency to enter into a relationship at a very specific level in a very specific way, to not be able to anticipate what's coming next and
Yeah.
next and next. Codependent people, I think, oftentimes find themselves to be really good at starting relationships
Hmm.
or getting into the relationship or,
Yeah.
something like that. But then what does it really take? That's
Yeah.
when, that's what I'm hoping to talk to you more about today.
Yeah.
To,
Absolutely.
yeah,
I think one of the big kickers for people who struggle with codependency, because I mean, you brought this up, and we've both talked about this together, where there's this fantasy of what a romantic relationship should look like, what it should feel like, because of the lack of self love that they have internally, and
mhm,
so you can potentially go start going through these phases, and one of the things that I challenge my audience to is that sometimes, even forget about narcissism and things like that, but even the an actual honeymoon phase of a potential healthy relationship can
right.
start to feel overwhelming, and if you are not careful, if you don't understand how the process actually works, you can get unglued. You stop
Mhm.
setting boundaries, and you just think, oh yeah, this person's the one. It's like, it's only been 3 weeks. Let's pump the brakes a bit.
Right. You don't, yeah, that knowing, I think people want to feel as if they
Hmm.
know someone so they can,
Yep.
and I mean, kind of skipping over that, not be vulnerable.
Yep.
That phase of slowing down, and yes, you can have those feelings, but recognizing that you don't know someone and then wanting
Hmm.
to get to know them is a vulnerable, it's a vulnerable feeling, because in
Hmm.
that process something could happen that you don't like this part of me, or you see that
Yeah.
weakness, or you see this as, a flaw. And I just
Yep.
want to jump into, this is it, let's attach.
Yep. Absolutely. So you said you want to jump into this is it. Let's attach.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so when we talk about attachment, and one of the things I've been talking about attachment styles all week long.
Right.
And so it's very important for us to, first of all, before we even start talking about other people and
Mhm.
dating and who's a good connection and what we're looking for, we really have to have a lot of self awareness. And speaking from experience, and also speaking from just what I tell and teach people, when we have that level of self awareness, what happens is that it makes it literally I don't know if people watch or have seen The Matrix. I've only seen parts of it, but where where Neo goes like, "Oh, I know Kung Fu." Like all of a sudden, everything just starts to make sense, right? You
Right.
start to realize that everyone's not for you, right?
Mhm.
Not everyone's going to be a good fit for you. They could be a great, great partner, a great, great person,
Yeah.
right? They could be a loving person. They may not be a good fit for you. But
Right.
and so that's the reason why we have to understand ourselves, understand our attachment. And I'm sorry, my dog, every time I go live, all of a sudden he wants to play if you guys are hearing a bunch of noise.
Yeah.
But hey, 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 stop.
This is my life of online therapy, by the
Yeah.
way. Like, oh, your dog, your
Yeah.
whatever. And then I meet them.
So
So you
yeah, so
you
we
can bring them
we
on.
we we have to have a good self-awareness. So understanding what, if we have codependent tendencies, understanding if we are attaching too quickly, if we tend to rely too much emotionally on our partner.
Yeah.
Because guess what that means? That means that we might be highly attracted to people who are emotionally unavailable, right? So, and being aware of that type of behavior, understanding that even though that might be my first attraction because that's what I'm
Mhm.
used to and that's what I'm accustomed to from my childhood and previous relationships, also understanding that that just
Mhm.
doesn't work. That formula, that system doesn't work.
Right.
Um, I heard a really good quote from Will Smith that I kind of adopted myself, and he talked about a broken calculator. When
Mhm.
with a broken calculator, if that number seven is stuck,
Right.
and it doesn't matter what you do, what
Mm.
formula comes out, it's always going to be a bunch of sevens. And so that's what it's like when you're struggling with codependency or you don't understand your attachment. You got to get that button unstuck first. So then everything you can start to input the proper
Right. So
formulas.
you can, yeah, that's right. That freedom to be able to move around, have
Mm-hmm.
flexibility of mind. It's a very closed system. This is the way I enter. And I want to say absolutely. I mean, as far as like being a chameleon and being able to learn another person's their language, like their kung fu. I
Yeah.
mean, and being a therapist that has, too, like how do I connect with someone? Well, that person's only talking about themselves. I've
Mm-hmm.
seen, myself even be able to take up ways of speaking that
Yeah.
totally make them feel like they're being, and it's authentic enough, but it's not authentically me. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm trying to help them, but it's in a relationship you can convince yourself,
Mm-hmm.
if you can align yourself in that mirror like image, that's this is it. You
Yeah.
accept them, they accept you. But
Yeah.
it's a very, that's again, I feel like it is regressive. Like
Yeah.
there's not something that's mature about it, where I get to stay different from you for long enough to get to know you. We've got to be the same.
Yeah.
We got to get in
And
there.
that's actually the opposite. So one of the things is that I always tell people that if we're going to heal through, regardless of what type of issues, trauma or codependency,
Mhm.
we have to make a decision on what type of life we want to live first. We have to have a vision of what our life should look like. And so we need to understand, like, what does a healthy relationship look like? And so quite often, I did a video the other day about, everyone wants a healthy relationship until they
Right.
realize that they have to set boundaries, until they have to realize that they have to respect the other person's boundaries, until they realize that they have to communicate openly, that they have to be vulnerable. Well, guess what? Someone asked me the other day about, well, how do we recognize and how do we process trauma? That's what we do. We look at what type of life we want to live, and then when we say like, okay, I do want to be in a healthy relationship, and then you start to say it to yourself, but I do have trust issues, and I do have this, and these are all the things that are preventing me from doing that. Then guess what?
Mhm.
Those are the things that we begin to address, whether it be in therapy, with coaching, whether we start reading and educating ourselves on it. And
Mhm.
then that's the part that we begin to take a responsibility of.
Absolutely. I find that is the stage that where codependency breaks down, because
Right.
of how much they rely on a relationship being I take care of you.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that actually, that energy, those energy pellets start to run out. You become
Yeah.
exhausted, and then things start to get annoying, and you're not really dealing with what's coming up and bringing to the table. I think, and that was where I was thinking, like, as far as talking about the stages, like what stage that comes in, because is, you know, and I don't know about time. A lot of people ask me about time too, like how long does it take to
Hmm.
get there? But absolutely, a healthy relationship, I totally agree, is one
Yep.
that you can bring your full self into and start to work through empathetically your attachment
Hmm.
issues, because we're all a blend of different attachment styles,
Yep.
not fully secure, not fully dysfunctional. You know, it's not, there's something about having a partner to do that with that I think then in some ways that shows you something about the relationship that's
Yep.
real.
Yep.
And so I think having that vision of being able to do that instead of being able to, you know, jump over that step.
Yeah, one of the things you mentioned was, the codependent. I kind of got sidetracked when I made my last statement. Where I was going with that is that the codependent adopting to the other person, and and to try to like avoid arguments, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
That vision, understanding what a healthy relationship looks like, you start to realize that disagreements are actually a part of a healthy relationship. That is a requirement in a healthy relationship. Vulnerability is a requirement in a healthy relationship,
Right.
right? And so those things that you're trying to avoid, of the disagreement and trying to please and trying to be over reliant and trying to just you mentioned the pellets, and those, that energy starts to run out.
Yeah.
You start to realize that feeling, right, is what, and that emotion, and all of the things that go behind you wanting to like identify and
Mm-hmm.
over rely, that have that over reliance on that
Mm-hmm.
other partner, right, makes it very, very difficult. And so that, when one of the things I tell people, and I tell people that they have to slow down all the time, slow down. And that pace
Mm-hmm.
is, especially when people are very first learning it, is a lot slower than what they think. And because it takes a long time to really actually get to know someone. And
Yeah.
we're not talking about just getting to know someone.
Mm-hmm.
We're getting to know if they are a good fit, right? Not just, we're not looking just for a person, right? Anybody can be, there's plenty, because a lot of times people who struggle with codependency, they just, and at least in their mind, they think they just want to be in a relationship, right? To, because of societal norms and the external validation that comes with it. But if we want a healthy relationship, it has to be a good fit.
Right.
And so that takes a long time to develop. We're not trying to find someone. We're looking to build a relationship with someone, and building anything takes time. And there's going to be times where it feels like everything is going well, and there's going to be times where it feels like things are not going well. And so one of the when we talk about the phases, and how much time and things like that, I
Right.
tell people that the beginning phases, you're really just the first couple of weeks sometimes, like, especially because most people are meeting online.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times people, I made another video about how the first date is not that big of a deal. And it, because a lot of times people, like, especially when people struggle with codependency, they'll go on that first date, and
Yeah.
I'm sure you've heard people like hanging like every little thing, every little detail on like why this person is the one. Oh,
Yeah.
they're 6 foot and they're this, and it's this ideal person, and they're reading this person like a resume, right? They
Mm-hmm.
check off all the boxes, right? This is the one. And I tell people, you don't know this person, right? The first date is not, especially if you met them online, is not a date. You
Right.
literally are just getting to know the person, right? We're just meeting, we're just friends. We just want to see, like, does this person get on my nerves? Can I hang out with this person, without them doing something stupid, or calling, like, just hang out and begin to like build trust. And I tell people that, like, in those first couple of weeks, right, where
Right.
see what it feels like when you break the touch barrier, right? When you hold hands for the first time,
Mm-hmm.
maybe if you kiss for the first time. At this
Mm-hmm.
point, in the first couple of weeks, we're not even dating yet, right? And a lot of people are surprised when I hear me say that, when maybe we're holding hands, maybe we're, because we want to see, like, if there is even a genuine connection. We won't know that on one date. We won't know that on 2 dates, maybe not even 3 dates.
No, and I think that rush, like that, just to kind of go back from what you were saying, like the
Yeah.
rush to identification
Yep.
is huge. Wanting to, even being pulled in by negative
Yeah.
identifications that you have, like, oh, you know how to go hiking up big mountains. Now I want to know how to hike up big
Hmm.
mountains. I like that, and I'm going
Yeah.
to do that. And there is all of this kind of false identification in the beginning because of the wanting it to be the one again, that
Hmm.
wanting to that merger. But if you can slow down, I mean, it's almost like a completely different reality what you're talking about.
Yes. Hmm.
To slow down and to allow for connection to happen, in a way that is really, I think, intentional, it sounds
Hmm.
like, um, as self-respecting,
Hmm.
really with your intention, with having a vision for what you want,
Yeah.
and really stepping into it in a way that makes, actually, like, is not protective, but I'm thinking protective in the long run, because there's not enough
Yeah.
foresight or for us to be able to seem to anticipate
Right.
in that identification phase, if whether or not this is something that we can see ourselves doing or really
Hmm.
struggling with later, like,
Yeah.
really. So
And I'm gonna kind of get ahead of myself here a bit, because we have to understand that those first couple of weeks when we're really just kind of feeling people out and things like that.
mhm.
After that, we're going to get into the honeymoon phase, which I'll talk about. But we have to understand that after the honeymoon phase is what's called the doubting phase,
Right.
where everyone, and we're talking about healthy relationships. We're not talking about narcissistic cycles of abuse or anything like that. But there's going to come a point in time where you're going to wonder, is this relationship going to work? Is this really a good fit?
Mhm.
Like, you're going to start to doubt, right, when all the euphoric, all the good feelings start to come down, especially
Mhm.
with people who struggle with codependency. And the reason why it's so important for us to know that that phase eventually is coming, no matter what. You're not avoiding it. You're not, you're. Everyone always says, keep dating and keep courting. It doesn't matter what you do. They can be great, right? You can continue the dates and things like that, but you're eventually going to get to that point.
Mhm.
And so understanding that that point is coming, right, helps people quite. Understanding that that point is coming, right, helps people quite often. So things really genuinely get to know this person, because I know that at some point in time, that euphoric feeling, that these feelings that I'm having, there's this excitement, the dopamine, the oxytocin that I'm feeling, right, eventually is going to start coming back down. And I want to know that that there's at least, it's at least worth it for me to go through this doubting phase with this person, rather than just me getting caught up in all of this euphoria that I'm experiencing right here, right now.
Right. And, I think, are there examples about what happens in the doubting phase that come to mind,
Yeah.
as far as
So
the woman feels or
you,
the man feels?
yeah. So when we talk about the doubting phase, I mean, um, you might wonder if you might wonder if your jobs are aligned, if your goals are the same, right? You're wondering if this is something that can last beyond this phase. You're wondering if let's say that you want to have children, are they going to be a good parent, to your
Mm-hmm.
children? Are they? You might start to notice certain things like, oh, this person's kind of a little bit sloppy, right? I'm not sure if this person is going to be able to be as neat and as clean as I am. Or the flip side of that, I wonder if this person is going to be on my case all the time, right? All the little things that start to get on your nerves, and this person's texting me like far too much, and this is where people start to kind of, if the relationship is not going to work, you typically are going to figure it out here. And I'm talking about healthy relationships, because I know that people stay in toxic relationships.
Right.
But so that doubting phase lasts for another 12 to 24 months.
Yeah.
Right. So we're talking about between the honeymoon phase, right, and the doubting phase, we're talking about like a 3-year process of still getting to know one another, still wondering if this is going to be a good fit.
Mm-hmm.
Still, you may know them, right? You may have opened up to them. You may trust them at this point in the doubting phase, but you're still not sure if it's a good fit. And so
Mm-hmm.
understanding this, right, allows for people to, when people ask me like, what boundary should I set? What pace should I go at? Knowing what that looks like, right, allows for you to now
Right.
determine what type of pace and what type of time frame you're looking at.
Right. Because I think one thing has to be then a qualification. Like
Mm-hmm.
we could say what in us needs to be ready in order to pass through this phase effectively. Like, because this is a time when there's an uptick in
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
arguing, and definitely if it's an oh, I lost you. Life together. 1 second.
Be friends with intention, right? So I had a question over here while you're hopping back on. So they asked about being friends first. Yes, but be friends with intention. We're not saying, we're not labeling it as friends. Like we want to be, we want to be forthcoming. We want to tell someone like, yeah, I'm interested, right?
Yeah.
But also tell them like, I also like taking things slow, right? And so yes, you can, if you want to call it friends or whatever, but make sure that your intentions are very clear, that this is headed towards like I'm looking to be in a relationship, right? That this is with the intention of us becoming something more down the road, rather than saying like, oh, let's just be friends, let's just hang out, because that's going to rub anyone the wrong way.
Yeah, that absolutely. And I think, friends, when I talk to, people that, men that are maybe back into the dating scene after a narcissistic relationship, or females too, but it's like, the friend thing is no demand. I
No.
mean, meaning like you don't have to text your friend, you don't have to call. Like it's a very like it's very loose relationship that's just
Right.
there. When you're getting to know someone, I do think there's a little bit more structure in the way that
And
your
intention.
respect and the back and forth and
And
reciprocity.
and there's some intention there on what what you're looking for. So
Mm-hmm.
you're looking for something completely different if this is a potential romantic interest
Mm-hmm.
versus someone that you're just hanging out with as friends. So intentions have to be very, very clear on both ends of what they're looking for, and if they're both headed towards the right direction.
Right. And I think I was thinking too, in the friend phase as well, friends can be different. There is
Mm-hmm.
something I think in high argument times in some relationships, probably before they ended, can you at least be friendly? Remember that time when you would
Yeah.
have that kind of banter, go back and forth, because it is so important in the doubting phase to be able to remember who you are to one
Mm-hmm.
another,
Yeah.
and then speak up and respect difference, instead of having to we're not going to ever get back to the
No.
idealization phase. We're never going back there. And
Mm-mm.
I think that's sometimes the mindset. Can we
We might have
just,
spurts of it here and there, but
yeah,
not to the extent that it was in the beginning.
right.
And to go back to what you're saying about the doubting phase, that like that's the reason why that time zone before you actually become exclusive becomes so important, and the reason why that part of it needs to be very intentional. That's a
Mm-hmm.
great part for you to start setting up structure, setting up boundaries of
Mm-hmm.
what it is like, and the reason why it's so important to be intentional, that yes, when I'm with a partner, when things get heated, this is how I behave. I might need to go for a walk. I might need to go through this. I might need to, if I feel, especially if you've had bad relationships previous, or you've been abused in your past, I might need to time out if things get too emotional.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but after an hour, and that's where we begin to start setting up the structure and setting up the boundaries, and having those type of discussions. We're still going slow, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we start to see if we can find certain compromises, because when too often people wait until the heat of the moment, right?
Right.
When we're in the doubting phase, after the honeymoon phase, then all of a sudden they're arguing over something goofy, and one person's like, I need to go for a walk. Where the hell are you going? right? You're just trying to walk out on me, right? And no one has had these discussions, and then now we want to have these discussions when everyone's pissed off and
Mm-hmm.
and shit's hitting the fan. That's not going to work, right? So when we set up the expectations up front and have these discussions of what it's going to look like, not if, but when we have disagreements, right? It makes it a little bit easier. Not everyone's going to be upset at the time, right? But it makes it a lot easier when we know what to expect when shit hits the fan.
Yeah, I actually think that it's not so frightening,
Yeah,
as well. So you're not, in this place of assuming, you're not a place of projecting, feeling all of
right.
your trauma coming back up, uh, because you have set this structure out. And that means that I can enter in, and you talked about this earlier too, building trust.
Yeah,
I think that's part of the trust building phase. I don't think people recognize that, especially in codependency, there has been massive violations to your
yeah.
trust as a child. Generally,
Hmm.
there's, and even though it doesn't look like the same thing with your partner, the feelings are, reminiscent of being abandoned, being rejected, left.
Yeah.
So, you know, that there's a deficit usually
Hmm.
already in trust. I trust if I can take care of you, you'll love me.
Hmm.
That's what I trust, but I don't, but not any sort of mature form of that. So
Yeah.
this really
And what,
challenges that, causes
yeah,
that
it really
growth,
is. Yeah, it really
right?
is because when we're trusting other people, we really also have to trust ourselves. That we have to trust ourselves that we're gonna
Mm-hmm.
we have a responsibility to ourselves, especially if we've been through a toxic relationship, to not allow for those things to happen again. That if certain dynamics start to come up, right, that we're going to make a better, healthier decision the next time around, right? And so the a lot of trusting in other people is trusting ourselves. That I think the hard part when we have mistrust is understanding that to develop trust, we have to kind of put ourselves out there. We have to put some risk out there
Yeah.
to even build trust with a person. But we don't have to put ourselves at risk to where it's going to be damaging, right? Where it's ultimately going to be like where we have the potential to be devastated when we don't know that person, which is again the reason why we go slow.
Yeah. I think that's that jumping in with all of these assumptions that this is going to work out this way, and again thinking that somehow, and I don't know if women suffer from this more than men, that somehow because of an intimate relationship, or because of that merger, or that level of emotional attachment they have now,
Yeah.
that somehow that equals knowing a man, or knowing a partner, or knowing the
Hmm.
person they're with. And that's where I think now you're not really taking responsibility for what is protecting you, because that's not real.
Right.
That's still.
Well, I think we do that for two reasons. No, number one, we have unrealistic expectations of each other, right? And
Mhm.
we have all these unrealistic expectations that this person is gonna. We always think of it from a very selfish perspective. I always talk about communication and people when they say, "I want someone that's a good communicator." And they say that I want someone that's honest. You want someone that's honest until they're honest with you about something that you don't want to hear. Honest with you about something that you don't want to hear, right? So what are we going to do about the times when we have to understand that all relationships are going to have, people say that, relationships have their ups and downs, but what do we have to make a plan. We have to have a plan and some structure in place, some rules of engagement in place for the downside, right? For when things are not going so well. And I said all that because um, a lot of people are trying to rush past that doubting phase that we were just talking about and into the stability phase.
Oh,
The
right.
stability phase is where
Okay.
everything is in maintenance, right? Everything, like where everyone's
Hmm.
finishing each other's sentences. You're just very comfortable. You're at ease, right? Not that you don't have tension, not that you don't have arguments, but you're at a point where you just know
Hmm.
them. You know what to expect. They know what to expect from you, and the relationship is just very, very stable. And so, like a
Hmm.
lot of other things, like building a business, like building a house, people want to skip steps. Unfortunately,
Hmm.
guess what? as fast as our society has become, and
Mm,
we're able to cut a lot of things out of society. Guess what? When it comes to people, we have not changed.
right.
We It still takes time for us to build. It takes time for our emotions to develop. Our
Hmm.
emotions are constantly going to change, even within the relationship. Sometimes you're going to love the person. Next minute, you may not be able to stand them. You may not be able to tolerate them. And so we
Hmm.
have to understand that. Guess what? It's that relationships are a responsibility. And
Right.
so these are all the reasons why we take our time, the reason why we pause, the reason why we build structure, and the reason why I tell people that relationships are built, they're not found.
Right. They're built. And that is the one image when, when I was doing couples therapy for a time,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
that was difficult. But but I would, literally, like, the metaphor they were building in my mind, the vision I saw of their relationship was this building, and it was built way up here.
Yep.
And I was looking at the foundation. It was rotted. It was like you put this, 2 by 4 here. I mean, like, literally, it looked like a complete mess, and it wasn't ever built properly. And
No.
their expectations when they walked in were to fix
Yep.
it and make it look like the skyscraper I wanted to be. And well, but the foundation. So if you really do understand, the value of relationships and what you can have in them, you won't
Mm-hmm.
want to do that, because that in of itself is so much harder and
Yep.
so much more difficult and painful. And people look back and, oh my gosh, all the time. Wait a
Mm-hmm.
second. So all of that time you spent building the shiny, house without a foundation, and it crumbles. Could you have spent that time building?
Yep.
That it's like the same amount of time,
Mm-hmm.
but you would have had a
Really is.
stable phase relationship instead of
Mm-hmm.
a disaster, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And and just like anything else you build, right? I remember when I started Matt Phifer coaching several years ago at this point,
Yeah.
it was ugly in the beginning. It was, people thought I was crazy. There's times where I thought I was crazy, but you have to understand that it's building. It takes time for
Mhm.
it to get to that end result. When you build a house, right? When you're building a foundation, it doesn't look very pretty, right?
Yeah.
And you start to get impatient, and when it's
Mm.
everyone wants a nice, big, beautiful home, right?
Hmm.
But no one, when we're building it, no one talks about the concrete that was poured down. No one talks about, the studs in the wall and that sort of thing, right? Everyone always wants the aesthetics. Everyone wants to skip to that part. And it's the same thing with relationships. Everyone wants to skip that part and just get
Right.
right to the stability phase, and it just doesn't work.
Right. Yeah, or, get to that place where it's representative of the stability phase, which is marriage, the ring, the kids, the house.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's inside, it's hollow. And I think that this perspective shift, like, or, adding to the perspective, not,
Yeah.
ones and zeros, not shifting back. I think that there is value in those things, but we need to include, again, the value and the
Right.
pouring of the concrete. There,
Those
that
are
is
those are a result of putting in the good work, not
right.
that one of the things that I challenge people to do when it comes to relationships is, instead of trying to get to like an end result. Quite often people like just want to get married, or
Yeah.
they just want to have kids, or trying to get to an end result, and then you get married or you have kids, then what? Right? Not realizing that there's a lot of things that you have to raise these kids. You have to, is this good? Is this partner going to help me with this? Is this, and so they're not looking at at the entire thing. And so you want to look at your relationship like it's a journey,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you're looking for someone that is going to enjoy this journey with you, right? You're
Mm-hmm.
walking from New York to California, and I want a partner to go with me. And I don't want this person getting on my nerves, abusing me in any way, because this is a long trip,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I want to make sure that, yeah, I understand everything's not going to be perfect, and the days are going to be rainy and things like that, right? But I want someone that is that this journey is gonna be enjoyable, right?
Right. And I absolutely think that that you can find people that want to do that too. I
Yeah.
also feel like there's this idea that, it's like lotto.
Hmm.
Like I win, I found somebody, and then you don't know. I think if people were more realistic
Hmm.
about what it would take, you would find that a lot more people are willing, because
Hmm.
it's not this scary,
Yeah.
all in or all
Yeah.
broke. And guys are even expressing this now
Yeah.
too. They're like, I
I tell
don't.
I tell people I tell people who struggle with codependency, don't tell anyone unless it's like your close friends about and outside of safety concerns with women about your first dates, because people who don't understand this will put a lot of pressure on you in your
Mhm.
first couple of dates. Well, how was it? And then all of a sudden there's a lot of pressure for that external factor, that external
Ah,
validation. Well, I don't want to disappoint anyone. Yeah, they were cool, but I don't know them very well. But then guess what? That pressure, when you already struggle with people pleasing,
yeah.
you're going to start to lay it on thick to try to make sure this works, because now everybody knows. I saw
Right.
a video of a woman. She had not met this person. All they did was connect online, and she one of the things that they said they were going to do for their first date was that they're going to go to a cigar bar. And so she wanted, and I you could feel the codependency through the video. She went to her entire family. She went to her uncles and her dad, who all smoke cigars. I have this date. I want to
Mm.
bring him a gift. What type of gift should I give him? Well, he likes cigars, and they went cigar shopping for this guy as a family, picked out the right cigar for him. And the mom got involved. Like, you're not even going to wrap it. Like, she had not even met him yet, right? So we already have this idealization, like we have this person on a pedestal, right? And
Yes.
so you can imagine, right, if let's say this date was just okay, just sideways, or God forbid he's not interested,
Right.
right? But now there's a lot of pressure, right,
Hmm.
for this person who struggles with codependency to try to maintain a relationship that may not be going anywhere because
Right.
of now all of this of this external factor. And going back to what we were talking about in terms of taking our time and understanding the phases, that part, right, when I
Yeah.
tell people that the first time you meet someone offline, it's not an actual date, right? If she would have realized that, like, I'm just meeting someone, let me see what they're like, let me see what they look like, let's just see if
Yeah.
there's any sort of connection and see what happens.
Yeah. I'm hopeful that is starting to become more the norm, as we go on, because I am noticing people change a little bit how they approach
Mm-hmm.
the first couple dates. But that example right there with the girl and the cigar and the mom and the dad,
Yeah.
that that level of enmeshment, actually somebody said too, I thought, just kind of spawned an idea in me, is like, as far as what is that is so dangerous, right? As for that, even that woman to ever
Mm-hmm.
even go out and find somebody, because she needs to find somebody they're going to approve of, because
Yeah.
she still hasn't actually shifted. And we can like talk a little bit about attachment style stuff, because
Yeah.
I find that people that don't actually mature their love attachment with their family and
Mm-hmm.
become an individual, and then really then have a relationship, that's where their love attachment goes. If they're trying to still share
Mm-hmm.
attachments with family and spouse, that usually creates a lot
puts
of
puts unnecessary pressure. Now, I'm not
yeah.
telling. I encourage people to tell and talk to people, but not to people who are going to that it's going to a point where it's going to apply pressure. Right? We want
Hmm.
people who are grounded, where you can have who are going to hold you accountable. Who,
Hmm.
especially if you struggle with codependency, if you struggle with boundaries, people who are a little bit more down to earth, right? Where there's not this pressure. Where we have the safety net of the support system, right? But it's too early for us to, for us to consider, for us to even consider if this is a good match for if my parents are going to like this person and that sort of thing, right? So
Right.
yes, make sure that we have the support system for safety, but we can pump the brakes. I even tell people to skip the first holiday season, right? The first
Hmm.
holiday season, because it doesn't matter if you met them, again, it's the honeymoon phase. It doesn't matter what part of the year you met them, right? And a lot
Hmm.
of times people, especially with codependents, they can't wait, right? And let's pump the brakes. Let's get through the honeymoon phase first, right? Let's
Yeah.
introduce them into the doubting phase and see if you still feel the same, right?
Yeah,
And
that's brilliant. Yeah, because that really causes people to actually have to
mhm,
face the feelings that they're not
yep.
wanting to face within themselves. You
Yeah.
know,
And so,
when you
yeah,
do
so
that.
I tell people to skip the first holiday season, because
Mhm.
you don't know, knowing that that doubting phase is going to come.
Right.
Skip the first holiday season, right? And see how you feel, and reevaluate after, because because once you've introduced people to family members and things like that, there is an immense amount of pressure, especially if you've had a
Mhm.
couple of breakups or you've been through a divorce, to try to make it work. And if you struggle with codependency,
Mm.
and your
Mhm.
family, right? You don't want to let your family down, even if you have worked through some of your issues and trauma. It's still going to be difficult. It's still going to be embarrassing to say, yeah, it didn't work out. Like, I caught them cheating. I said, whatever, or
Right.
whatever, because we didn't know this person very well. And of
Mhm.
course, again, and then guess what? Now we're re-traumatizing ourselves because we have another relationship that didn't work, right? In the
Right.
family's eyes, right? But on the dating scene, that's kind of common, right?
Right.
And so it's kind of a thing that, like, yeah, I realized that it didn't work, or they weren't interested in me, or whatever.
Mhm.
And so skip the first holiday season. Wait until you're a little bit more grounded and a little bit more aware about who this person actually is.
Yeah. And I really think if you do relationships this way, you're healing yourself all along the way.
Yep.
One that you can enter into, the doubting phase with, and then do that with, is somebody real? The expectation, the way you show up, the way they show up is not going to be, oh, when are you going to get married? Oh,
Yep.
when are you
Mm-hmm.
doing this? When you do that kind of pressure doesn't just come on the
Yep.
scene. It's something now. Well, I see there's two adults in the room, and I've got to deal
The,
with them like
yeah. And the,
individuals.
the the other thing, like, when we talk about trust, people who struggle with trust issues after a toxic relationship, it helps develop trust, because you're naturally, when you slow down, you are
Mhm.
naturally going to set boundaries. There was a person I worked with,
Yeah.
and she was in the honeymoon phase, really liked this guy. And then, he was like, I'm ready to meet your kids. And so she was like, initially we agreed, but I was like, after a while, she's like, I don't think I'm ready for that. Right. And, knowing, she took that time, processed and paused. So she had a conversation with him, and she was like, I want you to, I'm just not ready yet. Right. Let's give it a
Mhm.
little bit more time, still kind of soon. She had young kids, and in particular, my younger son gets really attached really quickly and things like that. And
Right.
he immediately, I thought you wanted something serious. I thought you wanted something serious. I'm 40 years old. I don't have time to wait on this bullshit. And so we
Right.
know there's no reason for us to continue to wonder. Like, we don't have to
Mhm.
figure out, we don't, like, this is the honeymoon phase,
Yeah.
right? And if this person can't respect a simple boundary of, hey, can we give it a few more weeks before I introduce you to my kids, right? If
Mhm.
when we see that type of behavior, why would we want to introduce someone like that to them anyway?
That's
Right? And so
absolutely
when we begin to
100%.
slow down, right, it
Mhm.
naturally causes you to set up boundaries. and
Mhm.
and but then the other hard part is that once they start to show that part of themselves, we need to accept that,
Right.
right? And we have to accept what people who struggle with codependency struggle with rejection. And I
Mhm.
tell people that rejection is not a bad thing, right? Accept it. You should almost
Mhm.
fall in love with rejection, right?
Mhm.
Yes, it hurts because of past childhood wounds, but healthy people look at rejection as a
Mhm.
positive thing. You're not wasting my time, right? I'm not
Right.
wasting your time. It's like we could have spent the next 10 years together, right, with this
Mhm.
person,
Right.
and with this person that clearly, at the very least, has a temper, very least not emotionally stable, doesn't respect boundaries and things of that nature, always wants his
Mhm.
way, very demanding, very
Right.
aggressive. Obviously, she could have really gotten herself into a really big mess, and so slowing down and setting those boundaries, right, it's gonna um,
It,
it's gonna really, people, both good and bad, it's gonna show you who people really actually are.
yeah, that's exactly what I say is why not? What do you fear? Oh, I fear
Yep.
rejection. Oh, I fear they're going to get mad.
Accept it.
Well,
Mm-hmm.
you need to see if they do,
Yep.
because the reaction gives you information. You don't
Yep.
have to take the reaction personally.
Yep.
You can see
Because it's
that
not
a
about
person,
you.
Yeah, it's
It's not
not.
about you. That is that whole tirade that he did had nothing to do with her. It was his selfishness that he wanted, right? Trying to create the enmeshment, trying to, and
Mhm.
so that the rejection, the anger, the aggression, all of it, it's not about you,
Yeah,
right? So when you look at it like that and you just accept it, like, oh, okay, so I see what type of person I'm dealing with.
right.
Right now, the hard part is that we have some decisions. So she knew what. So then that next step was that she knew what she needed to do, but it was hard because the people pleasing tendencies. I don't want to be
Right.
the bad guy. How can I make him break up with me instead of me breaking up with him?
Yeah.
But guess what? At some point in time, you have to be the villain in someone else's story.
Yeah, and actually, I have a question on my side too, and we're
Yeah.
kind of wrapping up. I know, but I thought this would be a good. How do you break a meshment? How do you, if you're in a relationship that feels, and I was writing down emotional entrapment.
Hmm.
If she were to introduce her children to him, she would have been, I feel, emotionally trapped because
Yeah.
she's now obligated to handle those relationships too.
Unfortunately, you have to rip the band-aid off.
Okay.
There's not because when we talk about enmeshment, right, with someone who's not emotionally mature on the other end, well, quite often, especially if we're talking about someone who's narcissistic,
Hmm.
they did that for a reason, right? Because they knew, right? They probably felt the codependency aspect on your end, and they knew it would be more difficult. They knew that they probably could at least tell or see that you don't like feeling guilty, things like that. And so, in a
Yeah.
situation like that, guess what? If she had introduced him and then she wanted to break up, I feel guilty because I don't want my son to see another man walk out. We a lot of people have those type of discussions,
Right.
and so we have to rip that band-aid off, and that those feelings that we have, we just have to
Hmm.
process them. Those
Right.
feelings of guilt, the fear, we have to accept that's our reality. It's our
Hmm.
responsibility to accept those feelings, process those feelings, but we still need to do what is in our best interest at the same time.
Right. And to overcome, and I think that that's the more difficult place.
Hmm.
So again, to focus and to be able to heal, I mean, and process, because there's some amount of grief in it, but it still
And
has
then
to be.
and it still has to be done, and it becomes a learning lesson for yourself later,
Yeah.
right? Because guess what? Because let's say she did do that. The
Hmm.
learning lesson is I need to slow down,
Right.
right? I need to pause, and I'm going to take my time before I introduce my kids to anybody.
Yeah.
So we accept the way that we feel. That's the feeling that I actually did a video on YouTube. Oops, here we go with
I,
TikTok. But where I did a video on Bluetooth,
uh,
I just uploaded it about going through those type of breakups and
okay.
accepting your feelings and accepting how you feel and those feelings of guilt and the fear and
Hmm.
the obligation. But even if we're feeling that, we still need to, especially if we see certain dynamics, we still have to execute on it.
We do, and we can make meaning out of these feelings for our children.
Yeah,
It's not stay in dysfunction and teach them that, because they
correct.
literally learn that through modeling. They see your stress, they see that person's control issues, they feel the stress, but you're not doing anything. So they're not learning, even how to mentalize or verbalize, difficult situations, and we get into them. There, that's
Yeah,
that, again, that's part of working through the doubting phase of even a healthy relationship, is be able to verbalize those things so they don't become such big, you know, things that are really difficult to ever start to work through. They just become
absolutely,
huge, whatever balls of resentment that relationships it just kills the relationship eventually. So,
absolutely,
and I
absolutely.
think the kids are seeing all of that too. So no,
Hmm.
you're not doing them any favor. That's
No.
for sure. Either way.
Mm-mm.
So, but I was going to say, you know what to say whatever I mean, as far as, I don't know if you needed any introduction, because a lot of people knew who you were, but tell them at least, I mean, I have a few people on what it is that you do and how they can get over it, like, because you have a membership, you have courses, you focus.
have a little bit of everything. So if
Yeah.
for people who are on my side, I'm going to upload my link. I do now have availability for one-on-ones. So I just opened up for one-on-ones. I have a few slots available.
Nice.
So I help people, but I do have
Hmm.
a membership program, so my coaching community. And so we meet a couple of times. We actually meet this Saturday, and people are able to participate with my podcast. They listen in on the podcast. They talk to myself. They talk to any guests that we have. We go into a Q&A afterwards. So between the two, we actually meet a couple of different times a week. There's a
Hmm.
community forum that you can talk and communicate with other people. There's a whole library full of videos and lives and courses that people can go and kind of pick and choose the different categories on a lot of different topics that they want to
Hmm.
rehearse or listen to, or things that they may have missed, lives that I may have missed. And I go
Yeah.
into a lot of detail. The other thing is that you get discounts on other courses. I have a course on dealing with emotional triggers coming out
Hmm.
next Friday. And
Cool.
people who are part of that get discounts on courses. I have courses on co-parenting with a narcissist, that sort of thing,
Huge.
breaking trauma bonds,
Yeah.
smear campaigns. And
Mm.
um, so people who are part of that membership get discounts on those courses. And what's nice is that there's a free 7 day trial on those right now, on that right now.
That's awesome. Yeah, a tremendous resource. I mean, you
Yeah.
can,
And
and they get to,
yeah, I also
they
do
get to,
one-on-ones. I also do one-on-ones. I do, there's a lot of resources. If you go to my link, there's, there's recommended books. There's a little bit of everything.
right. And we definitely talk often, and I
Yeah.
love doing lives with you. This is so much. I mean, the way that we're able to go back and forth, the hour just, ugh, it's
Flies
gone.
by. Yeah.
It's so easy. So I think, I hope that, yeah, too, as far as codependency goes, Matt has been really good to me. And I too have a membership now, and it's just starting. Not as many resources there, but a lot. I think that we're going to build it quickly. And I think the community here on TikTok is so interactive and so fun. And so like they're really wanting to learn and open with their experiences. I'm just like, this is exactly what I wanted to do as far as
Yeah.
educate and share this, because again, the shift in the paradigm that we're talking about is so important for children, for families, for the mental and emotional health of so many really great people that have potential of being in positive relationships. There are ways of doing this.
Yeah.
Are we going to
Absolutely.
spend your time wasting it, or are you going to spend your time building it? And I really
Yeah.
loved our discussion today, because I think people could change a lot of what they're thinking.
Yeah.
Just
Absolutely. They just have to
right.
change their expectations. They have to,
Hmm.
they have to change when you change the way that you look at things, the things that you look at begin to change. And so
Absolutely.
when you start to look at, everyone, especially when you're on social media all day, you
Hmm.
think that there's no such thing as good, healthy relationship and things like that, because all the algorithms take you down the wrong path
Right.
of everyone who hates all men and hates all women and people who bash and things like that, because all these social media platforms are designed to keep you on the platform. And
Right.
unfortunately, guess what? Drama keeps you on platforms and keeps you watching.
Right.
But the reality of it is that there are good, healthy relationships, and that there are people who are succeeding. There are people who are getting remarried and enjoying themselves and happy.
Hmm.
The other thing that people have to understand, and this isn't just me saying this, this is research. I think Harvard did this research, is that we're all wired for connection.
Yeah.
And so when we're wired for connection, our ability to be happy and fulfilled, right,
Hmm.
during in life is predicated on the type and the quality of relationships that we have. And
Yeah.
so if we're going to have good, healthy relationships, we have to be good and healthy ourselves,
Yeah.
and have our best presentation to other people, and find other people like us.
Right. And that connection can heal. I mean, we're healing ourselves, but I also think the healthy connection is
Yeah,
incredibly powerful,
absolutely.
because that's what we were probably missing. So thank you, Matt.
You
We
are
will
very
talk
welcome.
again soon. Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you, everybody,
Absolutely.
for joining us, and we'll see you again soon. Bye bye.
Guys, I'm